Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today I have with me Tiran Jackson. Hey, Tiran.
Good morning, Dr. Kimberly. How are you?
I am great and nice to have another Georgian with me on the call, right? You're still living in Georgia?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Still in Atlanta, so this is
That's
home.
right. So, just so people can know who you are, I'm going to read your short bio. So, Tiran Jackson is an inspirational figure, impacting the lives of countless individuals with his powerful story. After achieving professional success as an engineer, he endured tragedy and loss that threatened to derail his dreams. But instead of succumbing to despair, Tiran took these devastating experiences as opportunities for personal growth, leading him to seek out a new purpose in life, helping others find their strength amidst setbacks. He has discovered true courage by allowing himself to be vulnerable. This act alone serves as guidance for those seeking resilience on their journey towards greatness. Tyran's transformation into success will inspire anyone who listens. And I know everyone would like to hear your story, so just tell us about you.
Okay. So I started out as a engineer. Thought I was going to be an engineer for most of my life. I grew up in a small town in Alabama, but I had this strong knack for math and science. Went to college at Tennessee State, where I studied to be a mechanical engineer. While I was at Tennessee State, I met this young lady who turned out to be my wife, Malika, and she was actually a school teacher, or at least going to college for education, and started out her career as a school teacher. And as we were graduating from college, I had an opportunity to move to Indiana and work as an engineer for Rolls-Royce. Malika and I went there. We got married. We had our son, Cameron. Lived a great life. I started moving up the ranks in my job. She started realizing that school teacher wasn't exactly for her. So she went back. We both got MBAs and started looking at how we were going to continue to grow our career. Had a great marriage, great ambitious careers, and we were both really, really settled on how our family life was coming together and becoming. After about 8 years, we moved to Atlanta, and I'd gotten an opportunity to become an engineering manager for a small company. And by then, Malika had determined that she didn't want to just do the education side. She had gotten into higher education, and then from there, she had actually got into HR, where she was working to help students coming out of college get their first opportunities in corporate America. So this is where her career path went, and just moving along with the story. Back in 2018, Malika and I, we were celebrating what was going to be our 15th year of marriage. And at that time, we were both very busy. I was traveling all over the country in my engineering role. When I would come back, she would travel all over the place for what she was doing as an HR director. And so we were both very busy, and we were looking forward to being able to spend 5 days in paradise. We were going to head to the Bahamas for what's supposed to be a getaway and a time to reconnect. And the day before we went to the Bahamas, I drove our son up to Nashville, Tennessee. That's where Malika's brother and sister-in-law lived. And Cameron, our son, was going to stay there for the week while Malika and I were on vacation. I dropped Cam off and I told him, son, don't worry, mom and dad are going to have a great time. And he was excited for us to be able to get away and enjoy this. And he was actually looking forward to spending the time beating up his cousins and playing with their dog and eating ice cream late at night, all the things the kids do when they're not with their parents. He's going to be spoiled for a couple of days, but he said, go have a good time. I told him, don't worry. In 1 week, I'll be back to pick you up and we'll go on a vacation together as a family and enjoy. Because this was the summertime. And so he's out of school, no big commitments or anything. So this was the intention. The next day, Malika and I, we fly to the Bahamas. And the first 2 days there were great. Time at the beach, fruity drinks, time at the pool, all of these wonderful things people do on vacation. The next day, we thought we would do something adventurous. We thought we would leave our all-inclusive resort and go and do an island tour, an excursion. People do this all the time and don't think anything of it. So we leave the resort that next morning and we ride a bus that stops by several resorts as it gets to the marina. We get to the marina and we have a decision to make. Do we want to do the half-day tour or do we want to do the full-day tour? And Malika and I were talking about it, and I was thinking about how much time we still had and things that we wanted to do at the resort. And I thought that I wanted to go golfing that afternoon. And so I was saying, let's do the half-day resort. Spend the time here, but we still get to do the things we want to do while we're at the resort. And Malika, she said, okay, well, yeah, I guess I could go to the spa that afternoon. So we made the decision to do the 4-hour tour. So we get our tickets and we walk down this pier and we board to the boat on the left, which is the one for the 4-hour. Didn't think anything of it. We get on the boat, 9 o'clock, boat takes off. Everything is great. No problem. I can remember having my arm around Malika and the aroma of the sea and perfect weather. And we're out here seeing trees and we're seeing, taking off and everything is great. However, 5 minutes into the ride, my life would change forever. Unbeknownst to us, Malika and I were sitting above a fuel tank, and there was a fuel leak that was emanating from this fuel tank. And something created a spark, and at 9:05, I found myself waking up face down on the surface of this burning boat. As a result of that spark, the boat exploded. And as I'm starting to come to, I wake up because literally I'm on fire. My right thigh is burning as I'm coming to, and I'm laying on my stomach. As I start to wake up, I glanced down at my left foot and I could see nothing but blood. I could see my ankle bone, blood rushing out. My left ankle, my left foot was severed. It was dangling. And I was thinking to myself, I don't know what happened. This is all shock. I don't see or hear Malika. The only thing I see is the second boat and passengers on that boat yelling at me, get off the boat, get off the boat. I try to push myself up, but I crumble. I try to push myself up again and get on my knees, but I crumble. I didn't know it at the time, but my left collarbone was broken in 4 places. And as I was starting to figure out how I was going to get away from these burning flames, the only thing I could do was take my right hand, put my fingertips in the ridges on the surface of that boat, and just drag myself just a couple of feet away before I pass out again. Now, by the grace of God, we were still in shallow water, and that second boat wasn't too far away. And passengers from that boat risked their lives to come over and drag me off the edge of the boat and place me on their boat. And if they hadn't, 3 minutes after they got me off, the second fuel tank on the boat exploded. I wouldn't be here today. And as they got me on that boat, I started asking the question, where is my wife? Where is Malika? Well, Malika was thrown in a different direction from where I was still on the boat. And there happened to be a third boat that was in the area, and they picked her and one other passenger up and got them to shore. And as I was on this boat headed to shore, I was told I was going to have to wait before I could get some attention or some treatment. There was one ambulance. We're in a small island of Exuma, and so they don't have the same methods of emergency care as what we may be used to. And so after what seemed like an eternity, one good Samaritan who happened to be driving a pickup truck put me on the back of his pickup truck to take me to the clinic. But as I'm being taken there, I'm thinking to myself, well, I pray that my wife is okay and I will get to see her at this clinic. Well, when they finally get me to the clinic, they put me on a stretcher, and as they wheel me in, that's the first time I hear Malika. Malika is in one bay. Another passenger's in the second bay, and they wheel me in this third bay. And as they wheel me in, I hear her moans, her agony. She's yelling. She's fighting, but she's in so much pain. And as a husband, I can't do anything about it. As I'm laying there, I'm trying to still myself as much as possible so I could understand what's going on. There's one doctor in this clinic. And when this doctor finally comes over to me, I ask him, how is my wife? And he tells me that we can't treat you here. We're going to have to get you to better treatment. And I'm thinking to myself, you didn't answer the question about my wife, but what he told me is that we're sending you and one other passenger that were horribly injured to this good hospital, and your wife will come later. So I'm thinking to myself, that must mean that Malika is not injured as badly as I am. I'm still trying to hear what's going on in the background, but the next thing I know, they're getting me ready to be put on an air ambulance and flown to Nassau to the good hospital. But they do this, and I'm optimistic because I'm thinking, okay, well, I will see my wife later. She's gonna be okay. So they fly me to the hospital. I go through emergency surgery. As I start to come to, I'm in the ICU, and a nurse is there. And as she sees me starting to wake up, she goes out to get other doctors. And as soon as two doctors come in, my first question is, "Where's Malika? Where's my wife?" The two doctors, they look at each other in confusion and they leave the room. And I'm thinking to myself, that's the most obvious question. It's been 6 hours since the time we were in this clinic initially, and I'm just assuming that Malika would be here by now. Well, the two doctors, after a couple of minutes, they come back in and they say, "Mr. Jackson, we hate to inform you, but your wife didn't make it." And I'm an eternal optimist. I'm thinking positive. She hasn't made it. You mean she hasn't made it here yet? There must have been a problem with the airplane that it had to get refueled or something of that nature. But the doctor at the clinic told me that she was going to be here and I would see her later. Well, one of the doctors broke the news to me that she passed away at that clinic. And they didn't want to tell me that before they put me on the plane to fly me to this hospital. And so here I am celebrating what's supposed to be a momentous, celebratory occasion. Malika and I celebrating 15 years of unity, of marriage, now turns tragic. I cry myself to sleep that night, thinking that what was supposed to be an amazing time with the woman I love has turned tragic. I wake up the next morning thinking that this was a nightmare, but I'm still in the hospital, and I realize I have to do something I know I don't want to have to do, but I know I've got to do. That 12-year-old boy that I dropped off with his aunt and uncle had to get on the phone, and I had to tell them that mom and dad have been in an accident, and as a result of it, mom's never coming home again. To hear Cameron on the other end, to hear his heart break, and me having to break that news to him was one of the hardest things I had to do, Dr. Kimberly. And I was hurt in hearing him and trying to figure out how he was going to deal with life with the only woman who's ever been close to no longer here. But I told him, he asked his mom in heaven, and I told him, yes, she is, and that she's going to be our angel watching down over us. And reassured him because he asked if I was going to be okay. And even though I did not know how I was going to get through it, I told him that I was going to be fine and that we would get through this and that I would talk to him later. But that had to be one of the most heartbreaking conversations you could ever imagine. As I moved through that day, uh, things got worse for me. What they did while I was in the hospital in the Bahamas was they tried to reattach what was left of my left foot to my leg, and my left foot got infected. And so infection started going through my body. And as I'm laying there in the hospital bed, I can see the EKG monitor over my head. And I can see all my vital signs in a matter of hours go from green to yellow to red. Now, at this point, I was in my truest state of despair. I'm already having to suffer from knowing that the love of my life, my best friend, the mother of my child, the woman who I'm expecting to live the rest of my life with, she's taken away from me. I've had to break our son's heart and tell him over the phone that your mom's not coming back. And now I'm starting to come to grips with the fact that I'm about to die. That I am, that the next time I close my eyes are going to be the last time I close my eyes. And so it was at this point that I was starting to lose the will to fight and to live. And the doctors, they weren't even trying to treat the infection, but they were just giving me tramadol so I would have a passing that would be less painful. They stopped bringing the doctors in. They started bringing priests just to pray over me. And so here I am thinking to myself that it's over. And there were a lot of things that were happening in the background that I wasn't fully aware of at the time. And in the midst of all of this, there was a level 1 trauma center in Florida. They saw what happened. They heard about my condition. They said they were going to do what they could to try to save my life. And so, by the grace of God, I woke up that next morning and I was basically confiscated from the hospital in the Bahamas. and flown to this facility in Florida where they did what they needed to in order to save my life. Go into emergency surgery, they have to amputate my left leg below the knee in order to stop the infection from spreading any further. Over the course of the next 5 days, I go through 9 different surgeries. I had a broken right foot, third-degree burns on my right leg, a fractured pelvis, fractured vertebrae, bruised ribs, broken collarbone, and as I mentioned, and I was in and out of consciousness 5 times. Um, but in the midst of it, 2 days after that first day of surgery, I went through 5 surgeries in one day. And after I got through that, that's when God and the Spirit started speaking to me. And I started to get a little more insight as to what this was really going to look like. God told me that it was Malika's time to come home, and I had to come to a place of acceptance of that if I wanted to move forward. He told me that I was not going to go back to the life that I had, that it was not meant for me to go back and be an engineer, but there was a different path for me to go down. He told me that I had to say this was one thing: be resilient. That the obstacles I've overcome to still be at this place were nothing compared to the obstacles that I was going to have to overcome and face moving forward. He told me that if he wanted to, he could have taken my life 3 different times. When that boat exploded, when my vital signs went from green to red, when I was still unstable coming out of ICU, but that he was keeping me here for a greater purpose, and that purpose would become clearer if I listened. But it was up to me to make the conscious decision to choose to be resilient. I could feel sorry for myself, feel pity, and struggle to survive, or I could make that choice to be resilient and learn how to thrive as a result of this. So it was at that moment that the shift in mindset, while I'm literally in my bed trying to heal in ICU, that I realized that no matter the obstacles that I was facing, that I was going to have to overcome it. And even though I didn't truly know what it meant to be resilient at that point, he touched me with this message. That resilience is not about regaining what was lost, but it's about reshaping what still remains. And it's what you do with what still remains that determines the narrative of your life moving forward from this point. And that was it. That was the beginning. That was the start of my journey of discovering what it truly means to be resilient and making that conscious decision to choose to be resilient. And moving forward from that, I've done so many different things. I had a tremendous recovery that is documented where I had to go through a period of time where I only could begin I couldn't do much of anything. I could only write with my right arm, but that led to me journaling and writing a book essentially. While I was waiting for parts of me to heal, I was rejected by different rehab facilities because they wouldn't take me because I only had one functional limb. And I had to go live with my sister for about 6 weeks until I could actually start this healing process physically. I went through depression, severe anxiety, survivor's remorse, the guilt of knowing that a decision that I made took Malika's life. I went through PTSD, but I realized that all of those were pieces of what was necessary for me to make this transformation into the person who I've become. My business, my platform is called Reborn Resilient because I was reborn the day that that incident happened. But if it wasn't for resiliency, I wouldn't be here. And in going through this journey, I've learned so much about what it truly means to perspective on life, about not just being resilient, but about dealing with adversity and finding that strength in times of pain, of struggle, going through the grief process, accelerating that healing process. And then from there, just being able to make an impact on others, giving them hope and inspiration. And no matter what you're facing, you can get past it. I went from not being able to possibly walking, but saying that it would be 8 to 10 months before I'd walk, and I'd probably walk with the limp, to walking with a prosthetic leg in 3.5 months, and learning from going from walking to jogging to running and running 5Ks and 10Ks and being able to do some, like I said, some amazing things in spite of my limitations. And in doing so, like I said, it's allowed me the opportunity to be able to touch and impact people with a personal testimony of, how you can get past challenges. And granted, there it may sound It sounds easy, but it took a lot as far as reframing my perspective on life, learning to be vulnerable, being authentic, understanding how to ask for help and the right help from the right people, making the positive changes in order to best equip myself to be able to move forward powerfully in the world. This has been all part of my journey. And in the midst of it, I've had to be both mom and dad to my son as he was growing through those formative stages. I had to learn how to emotionally provide what was needed for a child who is grieving the loss of his mother. And in doing so, it has shown me a true level of fulfillment when I know that I can help others going through some level of trauma, tragedy, or transition, make the transformations they need to be triumphant in life again.
That is uh, just, I don't even know what to say. Uh,
Well,
I don't even know what to say because that is a story that not many people would tell of going through so many things. And like you said, you know, God took you through so many times when you could have been gone and you were here. And I love your definition of resilience, which is reshaping what's left. And that's how life is. I mean, you had those things happen, but other people have other things happen in their lives. And we do have to be willing to get back up and take a look of what pieces we got left and reframe and redesign something new when things fall apart.
exactly, exactly. And you said it right in the fact that, it's so easy for some people to feel defeated early on, and there is a certain level of grit, a certain level of will that we have to have, and certain elements that drive us to do what we need to do in order to overcome those setbacks. When I talk with people, I talk about my roadmap to resilience, and it's seven key steps that make you more resilient, or allow you to be more resilient when you deal with challenges and adversity. And one of those is having the right motivation. And sometimes we have to find that motivation to get us out of bed and get us going. And when I think about the times where I was literally going crazy, I couldn't control my emotions. Physically, I needed to go through and do the physical therapy, but I didn't want to move. But we have to find our reason. And I think back to a conversation that Malika and I had. This was about a year before we went on this vacation. We were in our basement watching a movie, and early on in the movie, the main character died and was taken away. And at the end of it, it led to one of these what if conversations. What if something were to happen to me? What would you want me to do? This is what she asked of me. And I'm sorry, that's what I asked of her. And she thought about it for a second, and she told me a couple of different things. She told me that if something were to happen to her, she wouldn't want me to grieve for too long. She'd want me to mourn, but she wanted me to go out there and find happiness again in life. She told me that she would want me to, um, she wanted me to go back and do everything that I could to take care of the only part that was still here left on this earth, and that was our son Cameron. And so she said that would be the most important thing that I would need to do in order to honor her legacy. And so when I was struggling to move and to get up and to focus and to figure out why I needed to get my life back together, because I was broken. I was broken. But finding that motivation and replaying my promise and commitment to her was one of the most important elements that was part of me being able to remain resilient and to keep going when I didn't want to. And so I think that's always a part of what we need to do in order to keep going, understanding what our motivations are and being clear on what those motivations truly are when we need to uh, get past a setback in our life.
Yeah. And just going to back to just something really practical, all of a sudden you're a parent all by yourself, and there are a lot of people on here who are have been widowed or through divorce or something, They're a one parent show, if you will. They are the sole parent. And I know when I got divorced, I had three children, and we went to this program called Rainbows, which was for people who are one parent. And it was at a church, and they would have groups for each kid. So the kids were separate from each other, and the
Mhm.
parents were separate, and they would help us through those things we were dealing with. Any suggestions for parents going through this? Any practical things or groups or things you know of that you recommend for people?
Yeah, one of the tools that I've learned, and I think that's great. I think one of the things that when you're going through not just loss, but like you said, the transition, you're going through a major change and life not being what it once was, and without somebody, there are opportunities to be able to you want to talk about it. You want to talk with people who understand and who have experienced some of what is necessary there. Um, there is a program called Kate's Kids that was intended for children who were dealing with the loss of a parent and getting them and being around other kids who were experiencing some of those same feelings. That was one of the greatest assets for my son in order to be able to at least have others who understood. I'll say this, kids have a hard time of understanding condolences. Instead of saying, I'm sorry for your loss, he would go to school and they said, I'm sorry your mom died. Well, that happened to be a trigger. And then he'd be emotionally broken for the rest of the day because of the way that that came across. Not by any intention necessarily, but it's just a result of it. I think that having some of those programs are so important. But then, in addition, we went through a lot of one-on-one direct counseling, and we did it together as well. So individually, we processed our grief, but then we also worked with our therapists to talk through what it looked like adapting and adjusting to life. One of the statements that I use when I give my message is that um, getting to acceptance is a hard thing, and a lot of times we hold on to what was in the past. Well, I mentioned to you earlier that prior to Malika and our anniversary, we were both very busy, and there were times where she would travel for work and it would just be me and Cam at home. And in his mind, he processed it for a period of time that mom was just gone on a long work trip. And that's the way that he compartmentalized it. And so it wasn't, basically, he was in denial. And denial is the enemy of acceptance. We can't get there if we're still holding on to something that we don't want to let go or a belief that we have to get past. And I know that's easier said than done, but through going through the exercises and the shadow work and the things that we needed to do to fully process the grief, it got us closer to a place of acceptance. But going back to your original point, Dr. Kimberly, I do think that there are resource groups that help be able to process grief. And when I say grief, I'm not necessarily talking about the loss of a close loved one from that standpoint, but as you mentioned, divorce, separation, sometimes it's losing a job or anything that we know and that we have love for close to us. If we love it and it's taken away from us, we're going to grieve it through it. So having the right type of counseling and advice and the right people who understand and can provide um, positive encouragement through getting through those times is great. And I emphasize that because I found that there are people out there who were always negative around me, and I had to limit that energy. And I think that you have to be more self-aware, even more so now when you're going through a major life transition on the who is really around you when you're dealing with that pain.
Yeah, yeah, so important. So, talk about what you're doing now. I know you are a speaker, and I was looking at I was looking on your LinkedIn, and you're, is it president-elect of the National Speakers Association? So, congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. You know, it's crazy how we don't always know where our path is gonna go. I am a spiritual person, and as I was going through this recovery, I was in the Word, and one of the verses that kept coming up was Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. When I was in the bed at my sister's house, trying to process, this was probably 3 weeks after the accident. And trying to figure out what is going to be the plan for me because I was struggling from short-term memory loss. And as an engineer, when you're required to know details and how things identity wise, I was feeling, I can't go back to that as it was shared with me before, but I didn't know what was going to happen to me and where my path was going to take me. But as I started to heal and recover and start to get back to life again, um, one thing that popped up was there was an opportunity that a friend of mine, he happened to work for a life insurance company and they were having a conference. And he and the people that he was with, they had spoken and they thought that it would be beneficial for me to come and share my story. And at that time, I never had any thoughts of speaking, never thought about, sharing it. I'm still trying to recover and get past it myself. And so I put together a talk and thought, okay, well, I hope that this resonates with them and get them in the psyche of someone who has lost their close loved one unexpectedly and the feelings and emotions that go through that. But I got on the stage and I just started speaking from the heart. And even though I say to this day, this was probably my worst talk I've ever given, looking back on it, it resonated with people. It touched them and it changed the way that they looked at life and even caused them to look at certain things as part of the relationships that they had. And as a result of it, I was asked to speak again, and then I did it again. And then before I knew it, I was being put on stages without even looking to do it. And that's when it clicked that maybe this is something that, God was telling me that I am supposed to impact people in this way. Fast forward a couple of years down the road, I've been able to build a business and life based on being able to help others in that capacity. And I got certified to be a life coach, helping those with building resilience and grief recovery. So the lessons that I learned along my journey, I use now to help others be able to navigate their way back through life after dealing with pain. And so, and yeah, after one of the organizations that I learned about a couple of years ago was the National Speakers Association, and they helped teach me how to build a business through speaking, coaching, facilitating from those capacities. And yeah, now today I've dove right in, and now I'm helping other speakers on multitude of topics be able to build and enhance and grow their business based on their expertise. And so I enjoy it. I take pride in that. And like I said, as I'm building and growing and impacting and getting my message out there to more, I'm realizing that there's others that I can help along the way, even though this is not what I thought I would be doing at some point.
Yeah. And, just going back to that first talk with life insurance agents, and so they could understand more about, what happens. But again, from a practical side, because there's always our spiritual, emotional side and our practical side. So
Mhm.
if an agent is in front of a prospect and they want to communicate to them in a way, and they could use a shortened version of your story, but how do they communicate to someone so that it's real to them so they can understand the importance?
Well, I think that what's important is that they come into it with an empathetic heart, that they understand that, look, even though um, you don't always you're not going through situations in that moment. But one, when you're dealing with a prospect, being able to show them the reality of the circumstances if something were to happen. I think that was very important and not just view them as another cell or another number, but as a individual with feelings, emotions, and have a life. So I think that's part of it. And then on the flip side, if something does happen to someone, knowing that one assistance is something that the sooner the better it helps them out, but also the fact that they're going through a lot of different things, going through significant loss puts you in a state in like a fog, a brain fog, where you're not thinking clearly about a lot of things that's going on in life. And certain items will emotionally trigger you and take you off any path of recovery. And just being aware and mindful that that is the person that you're dealing with after dealing with that significant loss is not the person you may know before, because they're trying to figure out how to heal and how to deal with what they've experienced. And so yeah, so just making sure that life is about relationships and communication and really how we interact with one another. And there are certain elements that we have to sort of throw out the window when people are going through that pain and really show up as a human and be compassionate and empathetic about what they're dealing with at that time. And especially, if you got kids, their life is still going on. You got to deal with the emotions of them as well as yourself. All of these are factors that in that particular situation, I wanted to make sure that were communicated to their agents so they could take themselves out of their position and put it in the mindset of their clients.
That's wonderful. I like that. Very practical. So,
Yeah.
if people wanted to connect with you, work with you, this is the point where you tell us, what services, what things you're doing now, and how we can be a part of it.
Yes. So the easiest way to connect with me is to visit rebornresilient.com. There you learn more about myself, my platform, some of the things that I speak on. And for those who are looking to bring in someone to inspire, motivate, but also teach about resiliency, I work with a lot of different areas. And I know people say, okay, if you don't have a specific niche on who you speak to, then you're not speaking to anybody in particular. But I work with from NFL teams, inspiring their athletes to corporate leaders and sales teams to be able to motivate and teach them to actually from a spiritual or religious standpoint with churches. And so that's what I do from the speaking standpoint, and also from an individual standpoint. I do have several coaching programs that I work with those. Happily Ever Interrupted is my flagship program where I work primarily with widows and widowers of those who are experienced the loss of a close loved one, be able to, like I said, get back to life again and learn how to live with that loss. I also have a program, Resilient Support, where I actually help those who may not be dealing with that significant loss, but they need to get life in a place where they need to. And if you can see my core values behind me over here, these are some of the elements that go into being able to really make transformation in your life. So that's one of the key things that I help people do, be able to design the life of their dreams and then take the actions in order to achieve those goals. And then lastly, one of my books is Choosing Resilience. If you go to choosingresilience.net, you can find more about not just my story, but how resiliency became a key and critical part of my journey, my life, and how I think that it will help other people overcome life's challenges as they appear.
Thank you.
Oh,
So,
and by the way, I'm
uh,
sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
I'm on social media everywhere. If you look up Tiran Jackson or Tiran Jackson Official through Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, all of those, you can connect with me there as well.
All right. So now time for a personal question.
Okay.
What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
At this point, what brings me the most happiness and fulfillment? Well, I'll say this. It is actually seeing my son thrive. He was 12 years old at the time. He's 19 now. He's graduated from high school. He's doing some great things, a great thinker, but really one of the most emotionally mature teenagers that you could imagine. Now, and as you can imagine, that's due to circumstances, what we had to overcome. But to see him uh, growing into the man that his mother would have wanted him to be, the young man, is one of the happiest things. And just the conversations that we have about everything regarding life is not the same as when he was a kid, but at the same time, it is this next phase of development in his life, and being a dad to be able to see that one of the proudest accomplishments and things that I can do.
So thank you so much for your story, for sharing, and thanks for being on the podcast.
No problem, Dr. Kimberly. Thank you for being open and willing to having me be a part and to be able to share.
Yeah, so I have one last question.
Okay.
What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
Best advice for living an incredible, amazing life. I would say two things. I got two things I want to say. One is clarity. Take the steps to get clarity on what it is that you want to do and need to do and how to get there. Clarity, I think, breeds happiness and success. And a lot of times, many of us are just going with the flow, but we don't know where we're going. So if you have clarity and you can visualize where you want to go, I say this everywhere we got in life, our mind got there first. But we have to think about it, visualize it, see it first, and then be strategic about what steps and actions we need to take to get there. So that's the first part. And then just the other part of it, and it goes back to this, uh, living life with intention and taking ownership of not just the goals and aspirations that we have, but even the failures and setbacks that we have. We have to be accountable for those things, but understand that we have to be intentional about making the change if we want to be the change and have the change happen in our lives so we can be happy, so we can be fulfilled, and so we can make an impact and do more for others.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tyran.
Thank you, Dr. Kimberly. I greatly appreciate it and have a wonderful and blessed day.
We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.